Hello all you fine beautiful people, I'm back here once again with another video, and today I'm going to be using something different. It's a concept that actually intrigued me. A guy I work with suggested it, because we got discussing Pink Floyd, and I said I'm a huge fan of Pink Floyd, and so I told him, like, depending on the day, what my favorite albums were, but I didn't mention The Wall. And he said The Wall's his favorite album by Pink Floyd, and I'm like, okay, I can understand that, but he then asked me, like, why don't you like it? And I said, well, it's kind of this combination of, I think there was enough there for about an album and a half, not quite two, so you kind of ended up with some filler on it. And he's like, okay. So he posed this question, because I think he's heard this probably more than once from people. He kind of looked at me and said, how would you fix it? If you were to make it the perfect, without making a single album, still has to be a double album. But he gave me one caveat. I could take one song from the final cut. He said, I know it was kind of leftovers from The Wall, so you get one song from the final cut to put on this album. And I'm like, okay. He's like, if you need it. So I went on holidays, 32-hour car ride without stops, so I had a lot of time to listen to The Wall. So I created different playlists of different mixes and kind of worked around it. So this is what I would call my ultimate Pink Floyd The Wall playlist kind of structure for this album. And going back and listening to this album, I think side one, which is pretty much like, I call that pretty much disc one. It's kind of like the first vinyl. It's side one, side two. It's that first record. I think it's almost perfect. The only thing, like, In the Flesh starts off great because it keeps you kind of that feeling as present day. Like, it feels like it's present day. Then you get the Thin Ice where you're going back into Baby, so it goes back to like when he's born. Another Brick in the Wall Part 1, Happiest Days of Our Lives, Another Brick in the Wall Part 2. The whole suite is amazing. Like, I'm one of the few that probably don't mind these songs. I think like when talking about his dad leaving, Happiest Days of Our Lives, and Another Brick in the Wall Part 2 talk about education system, the conformity. They want everyone to conform. They don't want them to be anti-conformist. Or, yeah, I think that's the way I'd say it. But really interesting songs. And then you get the absolutely beautiful song Mother, which talks about mothers and how they always want to instill these certain things like fear and nightmares, make sure they all come true, so you constantly keep coming back to them, so they're kind of like that safety net. And it's a really interesting song. Side 2, Goodbye Blue Sky, The Bombing, The Blitz, Empty Spaces really talks in that song about kind of like, I remember the movie quite a bit. It's kind of like the feeling of a relationship, how it starts off really good, you're passionate, you're in love, and then all of a sudden the fighting starts, then like one eats the other flower. It's, if you haven't seen the movie, it's absolutely insane. And then it goes into Young Lust, which is, I believe, one left over from David Gilmour's solo album, I believe it is. But it works so well here. It talks kind of that groupie lustfulness of being on the road. One of My Turns is an absolutely great Roger Waters pen song. Fantastic. I've always loved this song, talking about a dying relationship. He invites this girl back, and she's thinking, okay, it's going to turn, I'm in this room with this rock star. And then he has like this complete blow up, just starts destroying everything. And the visuals of listening to Roger Waters, like especially at the start of the song with like day after day love turns gray, like the skin on a dying man, but night after night we pretend it's all right, but you have grown older and you have grown colder and nothing is very much fun anymore. And it really is like the disintegration of a relationship. And you see it with Pink, like how it kind of brings it back into present day, and he has that mental break. Then you get Don't Leave Me Now. That's kind of a song like that I could take it or leave it, but I think in this context where like the girl leaves His relationship with his wife is done. And it feels like everybody's leaving him. And there's a great line in there like, to beat to a pulp on a Saturday night, oh babe, don't leave me now, is fantastic. I love the reemergence of Another Brick in the Wall Part 3 is amazing. Like, it's one of those songs that I listen to and it's just upbeat, high energy, and you can feel the atmosphere from Roger Waters in that song. The only misstep I'll say on side one, and I've always felt this way about this album, Goodbye Cruel World should have not ended side one. I believe like that's one of the things I've always thought about, is that's the one song where I'm like, you can't end that on side one. And then I started to get into, okay, so if that's not going to be there, what do I replace it with? Or anything like that. And the one thing I came up with is kind of doing a reworking of Is There Anybody Out There? And kind of cutting it down to be a little shorter. Because that's another really weird song where it didn't feel like it necessarily fit anywhere on the album. It's really interesting. It's a beautiful song. It's kind of haunting, but I feel like after a while with all the "Is there anybody out there?" it kind of goes on a little too long in the tooth. But I would rework it to fit side 2 here. Kind of end off that first, if you're on CD, first disc of the album. I think it works better there. Or if you want to do it Spotify, you just kind of keep the whole song and just put it there, but is what it is. On to side 3. This is really, I think, looking at it top to bottom, this is probably the weakest side of the album as a whole. But after Is There Anybody Out There, I still think Hey You is an absolutely awesome opener to side 3. Just that great, that mesmerizing guitar playing of a Waters Gilmore. You get just this great bass playing on this. You can really hear the bass on this, and a phenomenal guitar solo. Like, David Gilmour's work on this album is amazing, and I know Roger Waters does get a lot of credit, but David Gilmour, I think he was the perfect person to work with Roger, because he they could really work well off one another. And I think that's something that's kind of always missed in Roger's solo work, and even in Dave's solo work. I think both of them are perfect together, but separate, there's issues. But anyway, after Hey You, I would definitely put Nobody's Home. I think that flows so well, because up to this point, the album actually flows very well. Like, you get into Another Brick in the Wall Part 3, where he's kind of in that destroying his apartment. You get, is there anybody out there, like, to help him? It's kind of a really open-ended question at the end of the side. Hey You, another thing, like, you're looking out there and you see somebody and it's like, hey you, like, help me. It kind of makes more sense in that order. And then Nobody's Home, and absolutely, once again, Roger Waters' beautifully penned song. I like a lot of these Roger Waters, kind of like One of My Turns, Nobody's Home, Mother, where it's just very mellow but beautifully sung and has a really good melody. Just some, I always love the line, because I grew up in the country, I didn't have very many channels, so the line, I got 13 channels of shit on the TV to choose from, that always gets me, because I remember as a kid going through that. Now, this is really, to me, where the album falls completely off a cliff. And I don't know if it's just me or it's other people as well. Vera and Bring the Boys Back Home, narratively and flow wise, kill the album. It just kills the flow, because I was listening to this and every time, like, I had no idea where to put these songs, because I'm like, they don't fit anywhere. Like, musically, lyrically, like, narrative wise, it's just not there. They're not part. It's like, why are we going through this guy into this mental issues, and all of a sudden, bam, you're back in World War II type stuff? It's like, it doesn't make sense. It never did. So I really racked my brain, and I'm like, what do I put here? Because I'm like, there's nothing else on the album that I feel like I can put in this spot. And then I remembered the movie. And I think this is the perfect spot to bring a reprise of Empty Spaces, the one that's in the movie. And I think it's called What Should We Do Now, or whatever. Beautiful song. Hard rocker. Really brings the energy. It kind of bumps it up a bit from maybe the little bit of downer from Hey You, Nobody's Home. It kind of then slowly brings it up with that haunting guitar. Gilmore is absolutely amazing on this. Just that guitar, like that. Dan, dan, dan. Beautiful. But then you get into What Should We Do Now, and that do, 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 do. It works here. It's a really good song. And then the shall we buy a new guitar? Shall we drive a more powerful car? Shall we work straight through the night? Fantastic. And I think you can also add that ending from Bring the Boys Back Home, where it's like, do, 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 time to go. And it's like, you're feeling okay. Is there anybody out there? And then bust into Comfortably Numb. I really think thematically that works a little better than what we got here with Vera and Bring the Boys Back Home. And I don't think it's a Pink Floyd thing. I'll say this, and I thought about this after I heard Pete Pardo and Martin Popoff talk kind of about Bob Ezrin as a producer, and he was talking about Alice Cooper, and he's like, did Alice Cooper have like a 10 out of 10 album? And they kind of thought about it, and they're like, no, because all his albums kind of might have had some really strong parts. There was always some weak parts of those albums. And I'm thinking to myself, if a producer like Alan Parsons produced this, who produced Dark Side of the Moon, would these be on here? And the more I thought about it, the more I'm like, probably not. I think he would have been smart enough to see that as soon as you get Vera Bring the Boys Back Home, I hate to keep harping on this, it killed it. And it just killed the momentum, because it felt like it was building, it was building, it was building, it was building, it was building. And then you get to Comfortably Numb, and you're like, that's awesome. So then I thought, okay, we got that. We're up to Comfortably Numb. We're down to the final side. The Show Must Go On. I'm fine with that being there. It's kind of a short number. It's not terrible. It does its job. It's saying, okay, after Comfortably Numb, it's like the show must go on. Then you get into a really weird section of the album, is where he kind of becomes this fascist, egomaniacal rock star kind of interesting thing going on here. And In the Flesh, I love the reemergence of this song. I know today it would be very taboo, but I'm kind of thinking to myself, if you really wanted to know if your fans really stood with you, sing this song and its line, gotta find out where you fans really stand, and then bam, goes into some of these interesting diatribes about talking about Jewish people, black people, gay people, and at the end of the line, it's all like, if I had my way, I'd have all you shot. And it's And I was like, wait, what? And I always felt that as a kid, like, even when the first time I heard the record, I'm like, wait, what? And it just always was one of those weird things for me. Then you go into Run Like Hell, which kind of felt like, at this point of the album, it was really a really strong track on side 4. I can see why it was released as a single. Has this great vocal exchange, or at least I think it's a vocal exchange, Gilmore and Waters. Because I know live, I think when they toured The Wall, they had one sing one part, one sing the other. But it's a fantastic song. Like, once again, another leftover from, I believe, David Gilmour's solo album, which I believe it was Young Lust, Comfortably Numb, and Run Like Hell. But it kind of feels like, after In the Flesh, that breath of fresh air. You kind of get this swirling anxiety whirlwind as everyone's out to get you. It kind of feels like the On the Run of The Wall. And I think it works absolutely well here. It kind of has this great interlude. I love some of, I believe it's Roger Waters' screams throughout this album. He has always been a great screamer in songs. Go back to songs like Power Talk H from Piper at the Gates of Dawn, Careful With That Axe, Eugene. Just some absolutely great screams. Then on to Waiting for the Worms, another song that I think perfect where it pretty much is on the album, because I don't think any of these songs kind of at the end fit anywhere else where you can keep it. Waiting for the Worms is a weird song. I've always kind of really dug the rhythm to this song a lot, and I always love the speakerphone aspect of it, where it's like waiting, waiting, and it's just like through a speakerphone. And I have to say, it's one of those songs, once again, that has this kind of whirlwind feel to it, kind of like this anxiety building, and it's really a interesting song just here, and really drives it home. And it's like just about that point where you can't take it anymore, it stops. Now this is the one place where I will take a song from the final cut and put it in here, because I have never liked Stop. I always felt it was kind of a really weak number, and thinking about the theme of The Wall and this whole kind of egomaniacal World War II type guy, I always felt that the song that fits there, and I know it's from the final cut, is one of the few I think is a better number to go there. And I know people might disagree with me on that, but because of the song I have later, it has to be here. And I'm like, it fits very well. Like, when you're one of the few to land on your feet, what do you do to make ends meet? Make them mad, make them sad, make them mad, 2 and 2. Make them me, make them you, make them do what you want them to. Make them laugh, make them cry, make them lie down and die. And it's interesting, like, that whole thought of death and how it would be more, I think, and I think it would just be a lot more well open-ended for it. Kind of makes you, because then it's like the trial, but then it makes the trial mean so much more, where it's like, okay, maybe he did this thing kind of like D-Day, where all of a sudden everything around you is just crumbling, it's imploding, everyone's blaming you for everything now, and then it leads into the trial, which I think is a really good song. I've kind of been back and forth on this song for years, but the one thing I've always admired about it is its quirkiness, where it does feel like the trial, and it really feels like, I know it was like in Germany during the Second World War, there was always like these big show trials that were broadcast kind of to sow dissent. But it's kind of an interesting thing where it's like the show judge actually gets to put the egomaniacal leader on trial, and then it's like tear down the wall. And I remember hearing that tear down the wall and just this feeling of dread, of doom, of oh my god, everything is just crumbling. And this is where I make the change of it's not going to be Outside the Wall closing the album. It's going to be Goodbye Cruel World. I always thought that was the closer. That should have closed the album. Because I feel Goodbye Cruel World like... I've just always felt Goodbye Cruel World was a perfect song to end this album. Goodbye Cruel World, I'm leaving you today. Goodbye, goodbye, goodbye. Goodbye, all you people. There's nothing left to say to make me change my mind. Goodbye. It's such an open-ended, like, what happened? Like, did they kill him? Did he, for some reason, harm himself? Did he get shot at a firing range? Like, what's going on? Like, did he just go back to his normal life? And this was all a dream. It's kind of one of those great open-ended question songs that I think should have closed this album, because Outside the Wall just doesn't fit. I've never liked that song. I've always hated that as the closer. And I think that's one of the reasons that I've never held this in the same regard as like Dark Side, Wish You Were Here, Animals, Metal. Oh, would I throw Adam Hart Mother in there? Maybe not. Division Bell. Oh, what other album would I say? Even The Final Cut had a better ending. Two Suns and the Sunset's a better album than Outside the Wall. Better closer. I think it's probably one of their weakest closers in their catalog. Like, even Bike was a good closer. Jug Band, I'm trying to remember, was Jug Band Blues the closer to that album? Full Secrets? I think it was. But yeah, it's interesting just going back looking at this and how one question just led to me wanting to do this. And the more and more I thought about it, the more, like, I took a lot of time. Like, me and my wife drove to Ontario and back, and that's about, from where I am to where her parents live is about 32 hours without stops. We took the dog with us, so we had to stop and everything, and quite honestly, you have to stop anyway because you have to rest once in a while. And so we did that there and back, and I had about like 4 or 5 different playlists of songs, and I kind of mixed and matched and figured where I'd put this. But I think, yeah, Goodbye Cruel World is the better ending to The Wall. And I think it's a more darker ending, is maybe why I like it a lot. Because I like songs that are dark. It kind of leaves it open. It leaves it open to interpretation. A lot more than All Alone or Into is the ones who truly love you or Outside the Wall. But, yeah. But anyway, that's my thoughts on this. I thought I'd do this video for you guys. The guy said, do a YouTube video on this. I want to see it. I want to see what you came up with. So I said, you know what, I'll do it. And yeah, so quite honestly, like, even looking at this, I didn't really mess with the song lengths too much, other than maybe, is there anybody out there? I still think lyrically The Wall is a very strong album. And I think there was enough here. Like, I don't think there's very many changes that had to be made to it to make it an absolute masterpiece. But that's just my opinion. I know some people are going to absolutely hate this. Like, it's a masterpiece. It's beautiful. It's the perfect works of... It's the Mona Lisa. But this was just my opinion. Anyway, once again, thank you guys so much for watching. Got Thor chewing his bone in the background. This is me here. Peace.